The following podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is your number one source for the best deals on sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, and a whole lot more. Go to SeatGeek.com or download the SeatGeek app and use promo code BLUESEATS for $20 off your first purchase. That's promo code BLUESEATS only at SeatGeek, the official ticketing partner of From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast. Let there be live. This is it. What's going on, Rangers fans? My name is Jimmy Fanizzi, and this is From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast presented by SeatGeek. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BlueSeats94 and use the hashtag BlueSeats to interact with us on any and all topics at hand. Also, make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube and subscribe on all audio platforms, and be sure to rate us 5 stars. It would mean the world to us. The Stanley Cup Finals are upon us, ladies and gentlemen. And for the first time ever in the one-year history of the show, we will not have anything Ranger-related to talk about because, unfortunately, they have been eliminated by the team who will be representing the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup Final. That would happen to be the Florida Panthers, and they will be taking on Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. Now, I do have an apology to give out, speaking of the Oilers, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But before we actually get started, if you didn't see on our social media, and if you're not watching on YouTube, I am currently repping the custom Blue Seats shirt, courtesy of Rush Order Tees. Huge shout out to them for coming up with this awesome design. Thank you guys so much once again. And I did pose a question on our social media pages. I asked, if I were to sell these shirts to the public, would you want to buy one? And surprisingly, I have gotten quite a few responses of people who want to buy them. So if I get enough responses on this shirt, maybe some magic will happen, but we shall see. But I digress there. But let me know if you would buy this custom shirt right here. But with that being said, today we are previewing the Stanley Cup Final between the Panthers and the Oilers. And thankfully, I am not alone to do so today. I am joined once again by my very good friend, your best friend as well, the host of the Devil's State of Mind podcast. It is your boy, Neil Villapiano. Neil, it's been a hot minute, my friend. Thanks so much for hopping back on. How's everything?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me back on, Jimmy. It's always a pleasure to come on and talk hockey with you, whatever the case may be. I'm doing well. Can't complain. Devil's State of Mind continuing to grow on my end. Obviously there's been a bunch to talk about left and right, but the big thing that obviously we're both here for is to talk about the Stanley Cup Finals. Definitely, I think I could speak for all of us in saying that, we've all had that itch over the last couple of days of wanting hockey to get back ever since, since the last game of the series between the Oilers and Stars. We've all been really, really, itching to watch hockey again. And so what better way to do it than with game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals tomorrow night in Sunrise. And I'm excited to talk about it here with you today, my man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm excited to talk about it with you. And yes, at the time of this recording, it starts tomorrow night, June 8th, game 1 in Florida, 8 p.m. Eastern time on ABC. So let's talk about it from the Florida perspective first. Obviously, we know how they got in. They beat my New York Rangers in 6 games. Look, honestly, I'm not even hurt by it anymore. I've gotten over the fact that the Rangers are done, but I'll be honest, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Florida was clearly the much better team. I don't think anybody's going to deny that. But, Neil, what really got to me about Florida is their forechecking. That is probably some of the most aggressive forechecking by any team I've ever seen throughout these entire playoffs. They just jump down your throats from the start. They dive on top of the puck to try and clear it away out of the zone. They clog up the neutral zone like crazy. They block shots left and right. Florida is just a complete team. Something I thought Dallas was, but Dallas lost to the Oilers. I still think Dallas is a complete team. We'll get more into them in a little while. But from a Florida perspective, you know, Ranger fandom aside for a second, I do really love what I'm seeing for them. You know, Bobrovsky's playing out of his mind. He's a Vezina Trophy candidate for a good reason. Sam Reinhart is Mr. Power Play. He's been killing it on special teams. Carter Verhaeghe's been hot. Matthew Tkachuk is a damn problem. Nobody has been stopping that guy. And look, Florida's defense, I feel, has been a severely underrated part of their team. But the key for Florida, if they want to win this cup, continue your aggressiveness on the forecheck. What say you about Florida?
Well, I think there was one guy you forgot to mention that has been a major factor for Florida, and that's Sam Bennett. Ever since
I did forget him. I apologize. Thank you.
You know, he's really been a pest. But not only that, he's been able to come through and make a couple of big time plays, score a couple of, you know, really, really important goals. He is the type of guy that every playoff team, every team basically trying to win a cup wants to have on their team. And it'll be really interesting this offseason because, you know, there's going to be a lot of different contracts to figure out for Florida if Sam Bennett is one of those guys that maybe by some, you know, surprising circumstance ends up, you know, out the door. I doubt it, but, you know, it's something that I've kind of heard over the last week. But
I don't think he's going anywhere, though.
I don't think so either, but you never know. You never know what could happen. The salary cap always makes things very interesting in terms of team construction. But
no, you're right.
I would look at this Florida Panthers team, and I've spoken about them over the last couple of months. You guys have been listening to my podcast. They're as balanced of a team as I've seen. They're a team that can beat you in a multitude of different ways. They can beat you, as you mentioned, the special teams, particularly on the power play. They can beat you in a low-scoring goaltending game with Sergei Bobrovsky just really doing a phenomenal job. They can beat you by simply just outscoring you. They've done it. And then if you even look at game 6 against the Rangers in the Eastern Conference Finals, it was a drag it out, back and forth, really good goaltending game. Every single, you know, moment counted. It was just about, you know, just trying to find that one little opening, and the Panthers were able to do that and obviously end up winning that game and the series. And that is the type of team that Paul Maurice has always wanted to have and always his coach. He wants to have that balanced team that can find different ways left and right. I mean, these guys are ferocious. They find ways to intimidate you, not just physically. We know what they can do physically, but also from just a scoring standpoint and just being relentless. You mentioned the forecheck. That's a big thing. Relentless pursuit of the puck. Relentless keeping the puck in the offensive zone. And then even when they're on their back, on their heels, back on defense, they're still finding ways to be somewhat aggressive to get the play out. You know, you mentioned Matthew Tkachuk. I would argue to say that Matthew Tkachuk has still not played up to the level that I think everybody expects him to. And this is as good of an opportunity for him to step up as anything with the Stanley Cup Finals, you know, starting tomorrow. So this is going to be a big series for him. And you look at Florida, I don't expect them to come out and be flat right away. I expect them, because they've been there before, I expect them to come out. They understand what it took to get to the finals last year, and now they know what it takes to win. And now, once again, 365 days later, they are just 4 wins away from finally delivering a Stanley Cup to South Florida. And I think that this is as good of an opportunity as the Panthers are going to have. This is a very, very, very talented team, a very balanced team, and certainly a very, very dangerous team.
Yeah, no, 100%. Now, if the Panthers somehow, some way win this series, and I think they have a very good chance to do so, we'll give our official picks later on the show, but if the Panthers win the Stanley Cup, I think you have to strongly consider giving the Conn Smythe Trophy to Sergei Bobrovsky. I mean, what this man has done, he has literally, we went from talking about him being like, oh, what the heck is this guy doing starting the playoffs? Get Spencer Knight in there, get so-and-so in there. Now all of a sudden, from really in the conference final last year to now the Stanley Cup final this year, The man has played out of his mind. I mean, look, he's no spring chicken. He's not the same Sergei Bobrovsky that we're used to see in it during his days in Columbus, where he was still a very good goalie. But I think Bobrovsky, ever since he got to Florida, especially this year, has gotten better as a goalie. So I would consider giving him the Conn Smythe if Florida wins the whole thing.
I think right now from Florida's side, he's probably their favorite. And I wouldn't say that Bobrovsky came to Florida and immediately performed. There were a couple of years, I think from about 2019 to 2022, where the contract and the performance combined didn't look good. It just kind of looked like that maybe Bobrovsky was kind of, showing his age and really starting to, decrease his talent as a goaltender. But
That's
these
fair.
past 2 years, and particularly this season, he has been nothing short of phenomenal. And, look, we talk about it a lot, and especially with this offseason coming up, there's a lot of teams that are going to be looking to add, a talented goaltender or just make their goaltending better than what it was. And when you have an opportunity to have a goaltender that is as elite and talented as a guy like Sergei Bobrovsky, or even a guy like Igor Shesterkin, or whomever, you want to hold on to them for as long as you can because they come a dime a dozen. That's really what it is. And I think for Bobrovsky, it's been great that he has found a way in these last 2 seasons to really turn this around and really play at that level that he was expected to play at when he first came to South Florida. And if he's able to, deliver a Stanley Cup to this franchise, then it doesn't matter what happens the rest of his time in Florida. That contract and bringing him to the Panthers was completely worth it, in my opinion. And I think that he has played at such a high level that not only do I think if the Panthers win, does he deserve the Conn Smythe? I think it's fair to say that he deserves the Vezina Trophy. I think he's had that great of a season for Florida and for him personally. And so, yeah, he has been tremendous and he's been ultra aggressive. I think that that's what you didn't see early on in his tenure. I felt like he was playing much deeper in his crease. Now he's coming out. He's playing much more relaxed. He's taking some chances and they're working out. And the other thing is this. We talked about Florida's defense before. The Panthers' defense is very, very good. And they are giving Bobrovsky also opportunities to see the puck, to make those saves without question. And make the easy saves because you need to do that. But that shouldn't disregard and that shouldn't discredit the talent that Sergei Bobrovsky has and the performances that he's put in these playoffs. And if it wasn't for Sergei Bobrovsky, the Panthers wouldn't be where they are today. So, yeah, for sure, I think that for Florida, the front runner to win the Conn Smythe right now is Sergei Bobrovsky.
The chase for the Stanley Cup continues, and the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, is just as hot as it is on the ice. With same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more, don't miss out as the Stanley Cup playoffs wind down. Now, I am seeing that the Florida Panthers are the favorite to win the Stanley Cup at minus 135 over the Oilers, and I will ride with the Florida Panthers, but that's just me. What you want to bet on is up to you. And if you're new to DraftKings, you gotta check this out. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 on the Stanley Cup Final. Only at DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/hockey terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gambling resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024, all rights reserved. No, you're 1,000% right. I am with you, but that's the Florida side of things. Now let's talk about the Western Conference champion, the Edmonton Oilers, for the first time since 2006, they are back in the Stanley Cup final. Connor McDavid is finally on the big stage. I've been waiting to see the day he finally gets himself at a Stanley Cup final, and sure enough, him, Leon Draisaitl, Zach Hyman, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and everybody are finally getting their chance to end a 32-year drought of Canada not winning a Stanley Cup. Can they do it? Who the heck knows? You never know what can happen throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs, but we'll talk more about that once we give our official picks. But I gotta confess something here. I've talked some crap about Edmonton this postseason. I have. And, listen, Connor McDavid, we knew he was going to do his thing, right? There's no question about that. He's one of the best players in the NHL. Leon Draisaitl, he's going to do his thing. What I didn't trust about Edmonton was everybody else. Outside of Zach Hyman, who you reminded me, Neil, scored 50-plus goals in the regular season, which was no slouch. And you said it, and you were right about that. I respect Zach Hyman. I like what he's doing. And he's still killing it this postseason. But the main thing I didn't trust was goaltending. And surprisingly, Stuart Skinner has shut me up. He is just... I don't know what the hell has gotten into him the past few games, but all of a sudden, now he's playing like he should be a Vezina Trophy candidate. But even still, I was wrong about the Edmonton Oilers this year, and if they somehow win the Stanley Cup, then I'll have even more apologies to give out once that comes to an end. But, the Oilers have certainly exceeded all my expectations because I had pretty low expectations for them. Look, they were probably going to get out of the first round anyway. I expected them to get out of the first round, but I didn't think they were going to be this good. So my apologies to the Edmonton Oilers for doubting you all season, and my sincere apologies to Stuart Skinner because that man has shut me the hell up big time.
I want to start by taking everybody back to November. And at that point, the Oilers were abysmal. There was no question about it. They were awful. They looked like that not only were they not going to make the playoffs, it felt like at times that they were going to finish towards the bottom of the NHL. I mean, everything that could have gone wrong for the Oilers in the early going did. And then a result, what happens? You fire Jay Woodcroft. And so now what you do, you bring in Chris Knoblauch, who, from people that I've spoken to, Chris Knoblauch was a guy that was eventually going to be an NHL head coach. He had a lot of success, not only in college, but also in junior hockey. And he also had success with the Hartford Wolfpack. Just thought I'd mention that a little bit for Ranger fans. They've heard of Chris Knoblauch before. It's not a name that they haven't heard before. But
right.
Sometimes all it takes is one little thing to turn the season around. And that's simply what it was. You bring in Chris Knoblauch, who's a lot more mild-mannered kind of guy, and he just lets this team play the way that they're capable of playing, simplified a lot of things, and they rolled. Another thing that's interesting, and you mentioned about Stuart Skinner, is there was always going to be that question about the Oilers in net. And you started with Jack Campbell, who was so bad that he was sent down to the minor leagues and it never came back up. He's still there as we speak. Mm-hmm. And even during these playoffs, Jimmy, there were times where Stuart Skinner was shaky. 1 minute he'll have a really good game. The next minute he has one that makes you say, I don't know. And you go back to that second round series against Vancouver. At one point, Calvin Pickard comes in. Calvin Pickard, excuse me.
Right.
Because again, Stuart Skinner was not consistent. But he found a way to really lock it down in the Western Conference Finals. And he has that unbelievable Game 6 to clinch the series, in which the Oilers at one point had 10 shots and were winning the game by several goals. I mean, it was absurd. It was literally Connor McDavid and Stuart Skinner just carrying that team to the Western Conference title. And so, I mean, it's still going to be a question mark for me with Stuart Skinner. Is he going to come out and play well, or is he going to flop like we've seen him before? I will say that Stuart Skinner does do a lot better when he's had time to rest. Now, granted,
Right.
all goalies, you could say about any goalie, but like Stuart Skinner in particular, it seems like that's kind of his thing. So, but the rest of his team, like you mentioned, there are guys that you say to yourself, they needed to step up, and they did. And, again, McDavid, Draisaitl doing their thing. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins on that third line, finding ways. Zach Hyman continuing to be arguably one of the most underrated players in the NHL. He doesn't get talked about enough because he's playing on the same team as Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. If he was on a team where he was the main guy and scored 50 goals, he would be looked at, I think, a lot differently than he would now. And it's funny because I was listening to the Oilers Media Day today on Friday afternoon at the time of this recording, and the media was asking Zach Hyman about, leaving the Toronto Maple Leafs in 2021 to join Edmonton, and he said, sometimes the choice is not made for you. And he was kind of, it was a dig at the Leafs because they put themselves in a situation where they didn't value Hyman enough to find the money to keep him. And I'm not saying it would have made a huge difference in terms of the Leafs' luck or lack thereof in the playoffs, but I think it's one of those moves that you look back and I think every Leaf fan wishes that they still kept Zach Hyman. But there's one guy that you didn't mention that I think needs to be talked about, and that's Evan Bouchard on the back end. I mean, this guy has had nothing short of a tremendous playoff year. He has 27 points in these playoffs. There's only two players ahead of him in terms of total points in these playoffs, and that's Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. So once again, that shows you the value. 6 goals, 21 points, 18 games played, and has an astounding plus minus of plus 14. Nothing short of phenomenal year for Evan Bouchard, who is now getting recognized a lot more as a really, really top flight defenseman in the NHL. When you look at this Oilers team as a whole, number one, you can't give them too many opportunities on the power play. They will make you pay. They just flat out will, because their power play is so focused on getting the puck on net as much as possible. It's all about quickness. Left, right, boom. Like, that's what you've seen in these playoffs the entire time. Number two, you have to get Stuart Skinner uncomfortable. If you let him just make those simple saves and be, square in his crease, you're not going to have a lot of success. And the other thing is this. You may slow down Connor McDavid or you may slow down Leon Draisaitl, but it kind of feels like finally the Oilers have depth beyond those two star players. And I think that that's kind of what we were all waiting for. When were the Oilers finally going to get it all together? And they finally got over the hump and got to the finals. And you mentioned 2006. I want to tell you a really quick, very fun story about 2006 finals. So that was the year
go ahead.
the Oilers played the Carolina Hurricanes in the finals, one of those unique years where it was two teams that at the beginning of the year nobody expected. The big thing I just want to say really quickly before I finish my story is the Oilers of 2006 were a Cinderella team, straight up. I don't think that as much with the Oilers of today because of look at the talent that they have. That was a run that nobody expected. Did Oilers fans expect to go this far? I think that should be the expectation because of how talented the team is, but I think there is a little bit of surprise they finally got over the hump. But anyway, back to my story. So in 2006, being a Devils fan, I was heartbroken at the Devils getting knocked out of the playoffs by Eric Stahl and the Carolina Hurricanes. I believe that was the first round of that playoff year.
It was the first round, you're right.
Being a young kid, being 9 years old, crying my eyes out after the Devils got knocked out in Game 7 at home. So the rest of the playoffs, I made it a point to cheer for every single team that played against the Hurricanes in hopes that they would beat them.
Right.
Fast forward to the Cup final. I wrote a letter on, this is a true story. I wrote a letter and sent it to the Edmonton Oilers.
Oh, no.
Wishing them the best, hoping that they found a way to win. A couple of days later, I get a really nice package of a bunch of cool stuff from the Edmonton Oilers. A couple of stickers, I have a Christmas tree ornament that I still use to this day.
Oh my
So
god.
it was really nice that they sent me a letter back with a couple of cool things. So I just
That's
wanted to
really
mention that.
awesome.
So, but overall, I am happy that not only are the Oilers finally in the finals, but that again, Canada is once again on the precipice of potentially winning its first Stanley Cup in over 3 decades. And I think for most of Canada, maybe not Alberta, especially if you ask any Calgary Flames fan looking at Kyle Manifold in particular, it may not be the best thing, but nonetheless, we have a matchup that is really interesting with superstar talent on both sides, and the Oilers deserve the right to be here in these finals. And now, as you mentioned, you and I and the entire hockey world finally get to see Connor McDavid on the main national stage, and I think that's the most exciting thing.
We love you, Kyle Manifold, we promise. But no, listen, all jokes aside, you're 100% right. This is the most excited I've been for a Stanley Cup final matchup in quite a while. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Connor McDavid can finally do on the big stage, even though I expect him to do his thing. But I'm really excited to see how they're going to slow down that Florida forecheck, because that is going to be a big challenge. Now, with all that being said, it's time for picks. And I'm actually going to have Neil take the floor first. The floor is yours, man. Who do you got winning the cup final? And who's your Conn Smythe winner?
Okay, so it's a two-part question. I like that. So, yeah, first and foremost, I think that this is going to be an entertaining series. I don't think it's going to be one of those where it's just heavily one-sided. Will there be times where both teams look like that they're going to start dominating? For sure, because you don't get this far to the Stanley Cup Finals without being able to find ways to beat a team in different ways.
Right.
But with all that being said, one of the things that I look at is experience. And we've seen it countless times with teams who found a way, because it's very hard to not only get to a finals, but to do it again the very next year. It's very difficult. But this Panther team did it. And I think the experience is going to weigh a lot heavier than just the skill. I know Chris Knobloch said earlier this week, look at the Buffalo Bills and ask them if experience meant anything. I get it. By the way, that was actually really good, Chris. I want to give you credit for that.
That was pretty clever on his part.
It was very clever. But for me, I think it does play a major factor. And this is a Panthers team that has that mindset. And they're similar to the Washington Capitals of 2018, where nothing was going to stand in the way of them getting the Stanley Cup. And so with all that being said, I'm going to go with the Florida Panthers to win this series in 6 games. So they'll take the series in Edmonton. And my Conn Smythe Trophy winner is going to be Sergei Bobrovsky. I think there's going to be 2, maybe 3 games where I think Bobrovsky is going to be the main factor. And he's going to be the biggest reason why the Panthers find a way to win, this game or whatever. So again, give me the Florida Panthers to bring a Stanley Cup for the first time ever to South Florida. That's a lot more that's more impressive than probably a lot of the other teams have done recently in terms of trying to win something. But I'm going to go with the Panthers in 6 and give me Sergei Bobrovsky to win the Conn Smythe Trophy as a playoff MVP. Which I do want to say, by the way, I just want to say this. I still feel like that it should be the Stanley Cup Finals, just for the Stanley Cup Finals. I understand that there's situations where it's like playoff MVP. You look at what they've done through 4 rounds of the playoffs. I get it. But there's also been plenty of times where a guy who won the Conn Smythe didn't do anything or didn't do a lot through the first 3 rounds, gets to the finals, smokes them, does so well, and then wins the Conn Smythe. That's the way I look at it. But we can have that discussion at a later date. But yeah, so again, Panthers in 6, Sergei Bobrovsky wins the Conn Smythe.
This honestly was a tough series for me to pick. I've been going back and forth on this, ever since the ever since the Oilers ended their series against Dallas. And by the way, just an aside real quick, Dallas Stars had a great season in my opinion. Even though they couldn't get over the hump and get to the Cup final, I still think that they're going to be contenders for quite a while. Jason Robertson and the crew are not going anywhere, so don't sleep on Dallas next season. But anyway, I digress there. But this series, it's going to be a dogfight. I expect the Stars to be stars. McDavid's going to do his thing. Draisaitl's going to do his thing. Sam Bennett's going to do his thing. The whole deal. But the thing with me, what I look at here is I'm looking on the offensive side of the puck. Especially on special teams, because both teams love to score on the power play. Absolutely love it. You mentioned Edmonton's power play. They will make you pay. That same thing goes with the Florida Panthers. And we saw it against the Rangers. Their power play sometimes gave the Rangers penalty kill fits. Despite the fact that their penalty kill is actually really good too. They love to score shorthanded, which is something that nobody's really talked about outside of really Panther fans. But either way, Edmonton's penalty kill, though, really, it's good, but it's nowhere near to the level of the Florida Panthers. So special teams, to me, are going to play a big factor in this series. And because of that, I also have the Florida Panthers. But it's going 7. They're going to close it out in Florida. And I agree with you that Sergei Bobrovsky is going to be your Conn Smythe Trophy winner. Now, with that being said, will I be surprised if Edmonton wins the Cup? I'm actually going to say no. Because, I may have talked my crap about the Oilers with their lack of playoff success, with it just being McDavid, Draisaitl, and everybody else. I may have talked my crap, but this Edmonton team is different, man. They just have a different vibe to them. Ever since they hired Chris Knoblauch, he's got those guys on the right path. Even if they don't win the Cup this year, they're going to be around for a while. But would I be surprised if they won this series? No, I wouldn't. But either way, I think it's going 7. The Florida Panthers are winning it. And Bobrovsky, I agree with Neil, is going to be your Conn Smythe Trophy winner. Now, before we wrap things up, who do you... Go ahead, Neil. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I just want to show everybody this. This is from Megan Shakai. I forgot her name. But I saw this on Twitter, and I want to just show everybody this, if everybody can see it here on YouTube. Jimmy, I don't know if you have to bring it. There we go. So check this out. This is strength versus strength. Granted, this was in the regular season. But again, expected goals, tied for first. Scoring chances, tied for first. High danger chances, tied for first. Slot changes, tied for first. Inner slot shots, tied for first. Passes to slot. Panthers at 1 on the defense. And Oilers at 2. Ozone possession time.
Offensive zone possession time.
And first. So I just want to make a point that you brought up, Jimmy, that it's true. That this is going to be a battle.
Yep.
Between arguably the 2 best teams in the NHL. And they had a ton of success offensively. Panthers had a ton of success defensively. It's going to be a very big battle. But I just wanted to show that really quickly to all of your lovely viewers.
You are all good, but I think we all can agree, regardless of who you root for in this series, that it's going to be fun. It's sad that the hockey season is almost over, but, at least we have hopefully a good series to close out what has been a very entertaining 2023-2024 season. But Neil, this has been a blast, my man. It's always a pleasure to have you on. I know we have our differences when it comes to our teams, but personally, you've been a good friend of mine for a long time. I respect the hell out of you. I love you, and I really can't thank you enough for supporting me throughout my journey here on the network and throughout this podcast. And it's been another great season, and I can't wait to do it all again with you very, very soon, my man. Thank you so much, as always, for hopping on and for being a great friend all these years.
And the feeling is mutual to me towards you, my friend. And again, thank you so much for letting me come on and, preview this Stanley Cup Final, which should be fun. And again, it's disappointing that, not disappointing, just sad that the NHL season will be coming to an end very, very soon. We do have the NHL draft coming up on the 28th and 29th as well.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
obviously we have July 1st, we have the beginning of free agency. So even though there won't be hockey played, there will still be hockey to talk about.
Oh,
But
100%.
this is going to be the culmination of what was another great year in the National Hockey League. And yeah, it's going to stink when it's over, but just think about this. Think about how quickly it's going to come right back, how quickly September will come around and training camp's underway. And then we get into preseason. And then before you know it, the 24-25 NHL season kicks off. So it's been great. And I'm going to sit back, relax, and enjoy what should be a really good final and soak in the last bit of hockey for the season. But again, thank you for having me on, Jimmy. I appreciate you as always. And if you ever need a voice for whatever, you know where to find me.
Anytime, my man. You know that. He is Neil Villapiano. Go subscribe to the Devil's State of Mind podcast for all of your best coverage for the New Jersey Devils, if you are a Devils fan listening out there for some odd reason. But I digress.
I very much doubt that anyone who's watching or listening to this episode is a Devils fan, unless they support the Devil's State of Mind podcast, which, again,
I was going to say, yes.
If any of you are listening to this, really do appreciate it. And again, go give Jimmy a like and subscribe as well, even if you are a Devils fan. It's hockey at the end of the day.
You took the words right out of my mouth, my man. Make sure you smash that like button on YouTube as well, and subscribe and hit that bell so you stay notified of every video. And drop a comment letting us know who you have winning the Stanley Cup Final, how many games, and who you think is going to win the Conn Smythe Trophy. Let us know on social media as well, at BlueSeats94, and use the hashtag BlueSeats. And one more reminder, we are sponsored by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is your number one source for the best deals on sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, and more. Go to SeatGeek.com or download the SeatGeek app and use promo code BlueSeats, all one word, BlueSeats, for $20 off your first purchase. That's code BlueSeats only at SeatGeek. Alongside Neil Villapiano of Devil's State of Mind, my name is Jimmy. This is From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast. Enjoy the Stanley Cup Final, and we will catch you in the next episode. Peace!